I left the gallery system because showing the opening wasn't the fun part. Making the art is the fun part. I also don't mind having people come in and selling my art. I'm not afraid to put a price on it. I'm not afraid to write up an invoice.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barbara Kenan. I work here at the Department of Cultural Affairs and the director of the Chicago Artist Resource website. And I'm the coordinator of the Artist at Work forums. And I'm very glad to welcome you here to the beginning of the fall, end of summer, still summer, fall, season of Artist at Work forums. And we're super excited to have Beyond the Walls, non-traditional ways of making a living as an artist. And super excited that you are here with us. We do Artist at Work forums every month in the fall and in the spring. And there are, if you get a program that's in the back, you'll see down at the bottom some of the ones that are coming up. Working with aldermen, Art in Your Ward, working with aldermen and Chamber of Commerce is the one that's going to be next month. Another one about teaching arts and about Studio Chicago. So there's an interesting array of things that are designed to help artists and people in the arts and the design field be more productive in Chicago. I wanted to let you know that CAN TV is, the cable access network is going to be filming this for broadcast later on, so you can go to cantv.org if you want to share it with your friends and they can watch it on TV. And when we do Q&A later on, I'm going to pass the mic around, and it's really important if you have questions or comments that we do everything into the microphone so that everybody can hear it now and in the future. So, without further ado, I wanted to introduce and thank Lynn Besa, who is the moderator, but also really the organizer of this panel and of the panel that's going to be next month with working with the people in your ward. And Lynn is an amazing artist and a dynamo who's made a real big impact in the art scene in Chicago since she moved here 7 years ago. She's a public art artist, she's an author, she's an educator, she's many, many more things, a font of information, and she's also going to introduce the other panelists who are also really amazing dynamos. And so, I guess that's it for me until we do Q&A. And Lynn, thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. And one of the things about Barbara is, and the reason that we're all up here, is that when she hears a good idea, she'll say, okay, do you want to do an Artist at Work forum? And then you say, okay, and then you end up here. But as Barbara said, we're all really excited that you're here tonight because the way we've designed this is that 45 minutes of this, half of it, is going to be devoted to your questions and a give and take with the audience. So start getting your questions ready. And before we start and before I introduce the panel, I just wanted, and all of us, because we really tried to practice what we preach, want to know, first of all, how many of you in the audience are artists? Great. And then how many, I want to take a quick little survey about how you all find out about this. How many of you heard about it from Time Out? How about Chicago Artist Resource? Okay. How about a blog? Any blog? Okay.
I like that guy. Can I talk to you after?
How about the Chicago Reader? Okay, okay. And a personal email from one of us. And the rest of you just wandered in off the street? Or okay. That's okay. We're happy to see you however you got here.
A flyer.
A fly?
The Cultural Center sends out emails.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's actually the car. There's the Chicago Artist Resource, and that's what I said.
Okay, so.
Website, and then there's the e-newsletter. That's the other one.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So I want to just and you're going to hear everything everyone's know about us and then some as we get through our panel here. So I'll just introduce their names. This is Chad Curry, Lee Tracy, Nico Moy, and I'm just going to, and we're going to, we all represent kind of a different aspect of, and different ages and different ways of making full-time livings as an artist. And what we do have all in common is just the multiple income stream. Actually, Nico is an artist, but now she's a full-time gallerist, an online gallerist, and so she's going to take a little bit of a more different angle with you. Okay, I'm going to go through my part really fast and kind of just show you my my whole life's story. I had each of us put what our income streams are, because the whole point of this is we are not making our livings in the traditional way through galleries. Any of us, I don't think, or that much, or a fraction of it. So what I do is, and I'll start showing you, I do this is almost in order of income. Painting sales, public art commissions. I teach one semester at the School of the Art Institute. I wrote a book because I actually didn't have much work, and so I decided to write a book because I heard that you could make money from workshops. So now I do workshops. I bought an old building recently up on Milwaukee that I'm turning into Artist Live Workspace, and so I'm going to be getting a little income from that. And then I have shared housing expenses. So I've started out as a fiber artist doing site-specific rugs that tell the story of people's lives. I started doing more public work.
Excuse me, what was the last thing under rental income? Excuse me, what was the last thing under rental income?
Paintings. I have a studio practice as well, so I sell a lot of work through art consultants. And I've decided that since the gallery that closed that represented me here in Chicago, it was the last gallery I was in actually in the country, Flat File, I'm just going to start working with directly with art consultants. So I do pretty well with them. I sell a lot of work to hotels, either through prints or originals. And hotel art isn't what it used to be, with the Howard Johnsons or the Holiday Inn, and it's kind of a great cash cow because they redo everything every 5 years. So it's always cycling around. Everything's kind of a little bit stretched on this screen. And then I've been involved with public art for a really long time. I came of age in Seattle, and I was chair of the Seattle Arts Commission for a while, and I also was the program manager for a couple of public art collections there. And so I knew how to get public art commissions. So I've started, I'm about 5 or 6 years ago, I quit actually 10 years ago now, I quit my day job as a public art curator, and started doing my artwork full time. I had always been doing it. And I have other people fabricate my work for me. And that's one way that I'm able to do a lot of projects. I don't physically place each one of these pieces of small D. I didn't buy a laser cutter and learn how to laser cut aluminum. I subcontract with other people to do that, and 99% of public artists do that. This is a terrazzo floor that I competed for and won for the new Indianapolis airport. It's 220 feet in diameter. And again, I worked with the terrazzo fabricator. I just had this real epiphany, that anything that once I realized I didn't have to make it myself, and that anything that could be reproduced, created digitally, could be reproduced in pretty much any other material. This is a sidewalk telling the history of Glendale, Arizona in 59 mosaic medallions. It was a very conservative city, and so that's why, it turned out to be a very realistic piece. But it's done in that trompe-l'oeil Roman full unswept floor story. And so each one of these represents a different aspect of Glendale's. That's a horny toad. Nobody laughs down there. You say horny toad, and I'm like Beavis and Butthead, and they're like, horny toad. And I'm like, this is what I'm doing for Kingsport, Tennessee right now. This is really my first one where I've gotten a chance to work with other materials, and I'm working with Eastman Chemical. I found out they have an innovation lab, and they're going to be doing some of the copolyester resin fabrication, which is really exciting to learn about this. This is my most recent public art commission. This is a big terrazzo floor for Sabin Hall at the University of Northern Iowa. And so it's 10 feet wide, to give you that idea. And there's a glass elevator that goes up into the atrium so you can look down on it. So, and then the center part is the student gathering area. So and then another way that I make an income is I share living expenses, which a lot of artists do. There's my very suave. Yeah, horny. That's my small horny toad, yeah. And then this is the money pit that I bought up at Drake in Milwaukee that was just going to need a few little repairs, and I'm just running on fumes now, but I turned it into Artists of Workspace, and I had an open house a couple weekends ago, and I'm happy to say I rented every single apartment and every single studio space except maybe one, I think, so I won't be starving in the gutter. And then these other things, I wrote this book called The Artist's Guide to Public Art, How to Find and Win Commissions, when I, in fact, had no commissions at the time, because so I had a lot of time on my hands. But I really went through a lot of soul searching, and I was like, God, should I go get a part-time job at Whole Foods for the benefits? I mean, seriously, I was thinking about that, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to spend that time I would spend, working at Starbucks or working Whole Foods. I'm going to invest that in myself, and I'm just going to redouble my efforts. And I did, and I've had these like crises of confidence several times in my life. Once when I was 19, once when I was in my 40s, I briefly entertained going to law school, and then once, a few years ago when I wrote this book. And I always just keep coming back to, do you want to wake up every day doing what you love? And even if it means you're not going to make a lot of money, you have that freedom. And then if you get advice from people, like someone the other day was telling me, an artist in New York, he was telling me he was going through a real low point because he was thinking he was going to just have to get a regular job somewhere. And he says, because all his friends are telling me he needs to get a practical job. And I said, turn around and ask them how they feel about getting up and going to work every day. Do they like that? Would they like that? Do they want that for you? And that if something they don't like, and if they do love getting up and going to their job every day, well, shouldn't they want that for you too? Okay, so we're going to do this kind of bizarre shuffle. And Nico is next. I don't...
Okay, can you hear me? Is this normal sounding? Okay. All right, so I'm Mika Moy, and I'm the owner and creator of ashesandmilk.com, which is an online gallery. That is my income stream. This is the site. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself, but I mainly want to give you some basic information on how to promote and sell your artwork online. But first I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I got a fine arts degree. I got a bachelor's degree, and when I was finished, I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to make a living, so I did a lot of things from visual merchandising to graphic design to drafting technical drawings for architects, and I even ended up as a construction manager. In which that job, I was like, how in the world did a fine artist end up here, and why am I not making a living in art or in some creative field?
You look so happy.
So I started making art again, and I posted the progress of my work onto Flickr.com, which is basically a photo sharing website that has built-in social networking as well as tools to measure how many people are looking at your photographs. So I started building an online community that consisted of other artists, graphic designers, interior designers, crafters, and art and design bloggers. So I wanted to do an experiment, and I posted this piece that I made onto Flickr for sale. And within a few days, a buyer contacted me through Flickr's email system and wanted to purchase it. And so that's a piece in the buyer's home. So from this, I had the idea to create Ashes and Milk. So we're kind of short on time, so I wanted to, here's an overview of...
This is important, though. I think this is...
Yeah, I won't read through all of it, but this is just basically an overview of online retailing. But I want to point out the last point, that today there is an explosion of independent small businesses that make a living through e-commerce and are marketed through blogs, even though one person here saw this from a blog. But, and that includes artists that are selling their work online. So there are many ways to promote and sell your artwork online, and I broke it up into like 6 categories, although they're not limited to these. You'll see that there's this sort of like intermixing of business models where almost anything goes, and I think that's like kind of the beauty of being online. You can experiment without like much risk. So probably the most common way of promoting yourself online is through an artist website, which is basically your portfolio site where you can also display your work and you can sell pieces directly from the site. I think the main benefit of this is that you're going to get 100% of the sales as the artist. The downside is that you alone will have to generate traffic to your site. The second way of promoting your work online and selling it is to get representation through an online art gallery, which is basically the same as a brick-and-mortar gallery, but solely online. Artists get full representation of their work, and it is also created to fit a targeted niche. Okay. And also a benefit is that all the sales, marketing, documentation of the artwork, shipping of artwork is taken care of by the gallery. The downside is that a higher percentage of the sales will go to the gallery. I wanted to mention brick-and-mortar galleries. Even though they're not going to be like the best way to sell your work online, I think the downside to most brick-and-mortar galleries is that they will post exhibitions to their website to promote them, but not really have the intention to sell pieces like through their website. The upside to them is that they are really hard to get into, and they treat their artists well, and it is nice to have your work in a physical space. The next way is online boutiques, and they're a really good example of like a mixed-use space, and that kind of intermixing of business models. They can be online only, or they can also have brick-and-mortar storefronts. And they will sell like other products, but they'll also have art exhibitions that they will sell the pieces online. And the benefit to this is that they can reach both buyers offline and online. And the downside is that the higher percentage of the sales will go to the boutique. The next one is called an Amazon model e-commerce site, which is basically what Etsy is. And I don't know, are all of you familiar with Etsy? Yeah. So they're really an amazing example of the Amazon model. They have a really well-designed site with integrated social networking and marketing techniques. I think the main benefit of that type of site is it's really easy to showcase your work and offer it for sale. The downside is that some artists can get really lost on these sites because there's like this overwhelming number of art offered on it. Although, I noticed that the most successful artists on Etsy will market themselves outside of the site through either another website or a blog. And I think Lee's going to touch on that because she's taken social networking to this higher level there. And so art and design blogs. They are a really great way to network and to promote your artwork because they reach a really broad audience, and they're really geared toward attracting buyers. I'll have like additional lists of all these types of websites like on my blog so that you can kind of check them out and see what they are. Let's see, it's ashesandmilk.com/blog. So what is going next? So this is Design Sponge, and if you're going to get on any blog, this is the blog to get on. But she posted a really nice article that was written by other design bloggers about how to get published on their blogs, and it's at, I don't know if you guys can see that. at the bottom. There's a link, but I'll have this posted to my blog, and I'll have the link. And the last way to promote your artwork is through art social networking sites, which are pretty much like MySpace or Facebook, and you can like upload your portfolio and your profile, become friends with other artists who have like similar aesthetics, who may have leads to where you can showcase or sell your work. Sites like this, don't expect your work to be sold through it. They're really geared toward artists and networking with other artists, and they don't really reach out to like patrons. So I encourage you to explore all ways of promoting and selling your artwork online. It doesn't hurt to get on to as many of these sites as possible, and to reach out to as many people as you can. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to read this, but I'm not going to read it out loud. But it's an excerpt that I really liked by this guy, Paul Ardon, that I actually found through a design blog. Just a note, if you do end up putting your work online, you will probably get some criticism, and most people are going to be supportive, and they're going to give you positive feedback. But, I guess we all know that there's the occasional snobbery, douchebag, somebody that, someone just being mean, and but don't let it discourage you. Just get your work out there in as many places as you can. So it says, do not covet your ideas. Give away everything you know, and more will come back to you. You remember from school other students preventing you from seeing their answers by placing their arm around the exercise book or exam paper. It's the same at work. People are secretive with their ideas. Don't tell them that. They'll take the credit for it. The problem with hoarding is you end up living off your reserves. Eventually, you'll become stale. If you give away everything you have, you're left with nothing. This forces you to look, to be aware, to replenish. Somehow, the more you give away, the more comes back to you. Ideas are open knowledge. Don't claim ownership. They are not your ideas anyway. They are someone else's. They are out there floating on the ether. You just have to put yourself in a frame of mind to pick them up. And I really like that because it's something that happens when you get online, because so many people are on the net, and there's this exchange of ideas that's just happening like super fast. So I like that, and I thought it was very appropriate.
And that ties in with one way that I see the world, and I think a lot of other people do too, that it's full of opportunity. I think people like us who are making a living as artists see the world as a very wealthy place with lots of opportunity, and that we can focus. It's just focusing in on how to get that.
Yeah, and I'll have a follow-up to this presentation at my blog, which is ashleymonk.com/blog.
Nico, thank you. Before we start the shuffle, I had a couple of questions. One is, what do you think is the best way for your typical studio artist, okay, me, to sell their work online? Of all the 6 things that you gave, and I know you said do a combination, but what is the most effective?
What is the most effective?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it really depends on the type of work that for instance, your work. So your stuff is your work. I think you would do really great with an online art gallery, and definitely art design blogs, art social networking sites, and then you were in a brick and mortar.
Right.
I think the only thing that probably you would want to stay away from is the Amazon model e-commerce site. Because it can happen, but like if you're on Etsy, I think the price point hits a certain, it's lower. Where I think if you want to sell something at a higher price point, you're better going to an online gallery and then promoting yourself on design blogs and going to art social networking sites.
Okay, thank you. And all right, let's do. Leah's next.
I graduated from the Art Institute in 1989. I've been making art for 20 years and surviving on that, sometimes month to month and sometimes not. And I'm very happy, and I think that I'm able to remain calm through it all, and even those times that you mentioned where it can get scary, but after 20 years, I've never missed a meal. I've always had clothes, and I've had a bed to sleep in, and that keeps me going, you know. And so I painted when I first got out of school, and now I do everything. So to me, I used to call myself a painter. Now I say I'm an artist, and that's a license to do anything. And I do high art all the way to low art. So I have spread myself wide, and that is working to keep me secure and also to protect my creativity and have freedom in my art, that it is mine. And that's very important to me. I am on her Nico's gallery now, and that's new because I don't usually invite in an intercessor. I left the gallery system because showing the opening wasn't the fun part. Making the art is the fun part. I also don't mind having people come in and selling my art. I'm not afraid to put a price on it. I'm not afraid to write up an invoice. I can't even understand what's so scary about it, you know? But I hear that a lot of artists say that they can't conduct survival sustainability. To me, it's like exchanging buttons or salt, and everybody does it. Salt from, you know, we trading salt, buttons, shells. Okay, so I have salt in my bag. If you want some. All right, let's see. What you see here is in my...
Very diversified.
Yeah. So I have editions. I don't have originals on Nico's gallery site. I have editions. And here in the picture you see more editions. I make books and in editions of 5 or 18, depending on what the method is. So I have these in my studio, signed and numbered, and I take trips and do these installations that the product ends up being the books or a photograph. Here I have material. Let's see. There I traveled. Whoops. I do fabric, these long-term projects, so they aren't even done. And I make sure that they're long-term because if I put a time or a deadline on it and didn't meet it, then I think I would feel bad. So it's open-ended. And the high art, it's full room installation, so what do you sell? It has to be the whole room. So it's crated and stored. And the price tag would be high. So that's not something that I can reach people with these full room installations. Here's another one. These brain boxes here, that's my brain. They were online on Etsy because I ran an experiment. I wanted an opinion of Etsy, but I didn't want my opinion to be based on things that I heard. You need to jump in and try things and gather your own opinion. And frankly, I love Etsy, and you're going to hear more about that. But here is an installation. It's all packed up, the originals. I made editions of the brain boxes. They were on Etsy as a test. Now they're in Nico's gallery. And I'm really thrilled with this new relationship. This is my studio. It's an old boiler room. It's big. I happened upon it and was fortunate, and I have to work very hard now because the rent was increased due to everyone in this climate, and actually the landlord said he wanted to introduce me to the real world, and I said I don't really want to go, but he's been so kind to me, I just thought, all right, I'll pay the rent, but it is hard. I move things around. That's a movable wall. I took that apart. Everything's on wheels because if I have this huge space on my site, it's available for rentals, for parties, cocktail parties, birthday parties, and I just clean it up, or I don't, because some people just like to come in the studio. And you can see here, local market. I'm a green artist, I'm a green citizen, and I do what I can for the green movement. That's the studio, another portion cleaned up. And I can have my art up. Sometimes it's in the background, it's secondary, or the lights are low, no one notices. But in the end, as people come through the studio, it's still something that can come back around somehow. You know, it's all sort of magical, and I think the point is to put yourself out there. Here's an installation. Why is that in there? I did it. I don't know why. It's just this is something I'm working on, 100 Tiers. It's a long-term project. And again, people come in and they see this. And I am writing up a little plaque so they can read about it too. This is part of the studio in a different way. Here's one of the fairs in the studio.
Could you say more about the fairs?
Vendors. I'm working with Mimi's Organic Exchange.com, and she's a friend of mine, and she takes applications and runs these fairs, among other things, with music and holistic services. So we've been working together to get this off the ground. So it's an opportunity for craftspeople, artists, services to come together.
Do you charge them for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They get a booth charge.
What is it called?
Mimi's Organic Exchange.com.
We have a question over here.
What's the address?
855 West Blackhawk.
Near the new Whole Foods.
And a 32-story high-rise that's empty.
And then you had a question in the gray.
Yeah, how does she drive? Who drives traffic to the fairs?
Can you please tell me who drives traffic to the fairs?
Mimi.
How
Mimi
does she
sends
do
out
that?
press releases. We're
Online or
Huh?
online press releases or just?
She has a press release on her site.
Yeah.
And she's out making phone calls. She makes phone calls, then she goes out and she passes out cards. It's a good mix because she goes out more than I do. That's for sure. Okay. Here I'm recycling. My husband makes frames and stretchers and crates for artists, and we're in the same space and we work together. And I just wanted to show, he has scraps left over from the frame, so he makes all these little mini frames like every 2 to 3 years, and I fill them with these very mini paintings, and I always have those in my studio for very affordable, under $100, because my approach is I want to, everyone's welcome to have a piece of art. It has to be attainable at many levels. And this is always this project that I do every few years. This is making bags from recycled material. I'm trying to get my studio to zero waste. Pillows from the leftover canvas on the sides. You know, you always have, when you stretch canvas, there's that remnant. I make T-shirts, and I started in 2005. I'm on Etsy. I run 3 shops on Etsy, and it's fun and simple, actually, because you can feed it all into one PayPal account. So it's not like running 3 shops, but it's 3 different looks. 3 different looks, and I'm experimenting with, one is U.S. organic cotton. So I have that shop where I promote U.S. made, and then...
Do you have a portal that ties all 3 together?
PayPal. Everything I do flows into PayPal.
Aside from commerce-wise, but like promotional-wise?
Just Etsy. I don't put any money into promotion at all.
So, but if I visit one shop, I didn't know that the two shops...
I have it listed.
Oh,
And do you make money from Etsy?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. And then when I least expect it or when I need it, and in spring when it was T-shirt season, it's amazing. It's nice to have the PayPal account filling up, and then I have a debit card, so I don't use credit cards. I only use the debit card, and I spend the money in the PayPal account. So you spend what you make. So all the shops go in there. I also do digital printing, so all my printing is green. There's a fabric printer right there in the picture, and I had to learn that. On my site, now you're going to see parts of my site. Here's Look for Fiddleheads. That's one of my lines. Kitten in the Engine. That has my writing on it. Then this is patronage. So I have collecting. These are many ways you can find my art. So studio visits. A subscription that's new. So friends, if they want to contribute to my mission and my goals, and they want a piece of art, they can pay. It's like layaway in a sense. They can pay $100 for however long, and we make this arrangement. Okay. All right, online I also have future plans, desires. I have a wish list that has links and the amount. So I just put everything out there, my dreams and what I need.
What's on one of those wish lists?
I need gold leaf. It's like $1,000 and something. So that's there. I need paper. Everything, my wish list of my art supplies are on this page. And when I get something, I take it off and put something else back on. This is a list of things that I'm working on, completed, current. So I'm letting patrons know how busy I am and how determined. Here's a project, World Rivers. Another project. I'm going to skip forward. I'm on Twitter. And I love Twitter. There's over 4,000 artists on Twitter. Let's see, I'm going to get to... Here is, see the slash mark and then art. We're having a discussion on art. That's the way some people think we're just tweeting, I just had orange juice, and it's not the case. We're having dialogue about standards of art and how to come up with standards. We have art walks on Thursday night where you can upload a picture. Here is a painting that I did. It's a little stretched out, but I tweeted that. Olives have pits. Here I'm using Twitter. I'm trying to get this to the International Space Station, so I'm tweeting with some astronauts and introducing this idea into the public. I mean, will it happen? I don't know. But I'm having fun doing it, and it's like a performance piece, too. Here's the curtain we're working on. I started a team with Etsy, that's all green, Etsy Earth, and this Twitter account is listing our items from the shops only. So this is a marketplace. So I started this team because I don't want to push my T-shirts through my personal account. This is a marketplace only, and it's really taking off. We have a blog. So painting sales, patrons, online gallery, space rental and events, teaching, workshops, T-shirts.
So, Lee, where's the biggest source of your income from?
It changes all the time. Sometimes, like the beginning of the year, I sold 5 paintings, so that was huge. And
How do you make sales happen? Not just for your paintings, but for anything.
I think I talk a lot.
Actually, that's how Lee, the idea for this panel came from Lee. Her husband is my framer, so I went in to pick up some work, and we got into this long talk. Anyway, she said she'd run away her resume years ago, and she just works in her pajamas all day, and that sounded good to me. And she was talking about this thing called Twitter, and so I think other artists, I was very excited, and I thought other artists would like to know about this too, and so the idea for this panel was born. So she makes stuff happen. She's just out there and without ever leaving her home. I hardly recognized her, and I told her she's actually a very attractive woman when she's cleaned up. So
I am clean tonight.
all right. Well, I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions for Lee and Nico afterwards. But we're going to do Chad now. Chad represents the youngest of our generation. I may be the most traditional of the artists up here, and Chad is taking an approach that I can look out here, and I think many of you are going to be able to relate to that in your own practice. Oh.
Chad, Corey, I'm definitely a lot different than the ladies up here. I studied graphic design at Columbia College, and I did not finish my degree there. I came to Chicago very aware that I didn't have enough money to finish school, so I came and took as many classes as I possibly could and met as many people as I could, just to kind of figure out how things work in a more city environment. I came from a somewhat rural area that was very conservative, and I was like, well, I just want to make stuff all day, so Chicago seemed like the right place. And I'm from Michigan. Detroit was an option, but Chicago's better. I won't even get into that because I'll take up my entire timeline. But so I came here to Chicago about 6 years ago now to study for school, and ended up kind of in this pattern of being on the computer a lot. And that's okay. I'll keep it here. So I decided I kind of wanted to get away from that, and I was in a marketing job, and I've been told, like, this is how you market specific things, and I didn't want to really hear any of that. I just wanted to make stuff. So I went through this casual progression of taking commissioned design jobs to doing some artwork in my free time, and slowly switched the two, and I'm still kind of in the process of it. So that's just a general background, but we'll get into here. Income streams. My main source of income right now is commissioned design and illustration work, and I've gotten to the point where I'm very much one of the artists, and there's a lot of discussion in this scene right now of, in this gray area in between art and design. What is art? What is design? Are they the same thing? Are they different? But there's a lot of communication moving in the community of this idea of, I like to go by the rule of thumb is if you call yourself an artist, really you are. There really aren't any guidelines to it. One thing is just telling yourself and telling others that you're an artist and then acting upon that. So, most of my stuff comes from commissioned design illustration work. I also make art zine and do screen printing a lot with a local design and art collective here called the Post Family, and what we do in our space is we have studio space in the back where all of us can kind of do our own things. There's 7 of us all together, and all of us came from this background of marketing and design, and now we're trying to get back to our hands and do more things hands-on and for our own benefits. So we have this space where we can work in the back, and then the front is a more conservative kind of gallery setup where we'll have everything from formal gallery shows to more interactive experiences. Like I had a doodle party like a couple months ago where people just came and sat down and they draw and talk to people, and we try to make it more of our space more of a destination than a something that you just go in and walk out and check out the artwork and leave. So we keep our entire space open through all of our events so people can check out the stuff in the front and then sit down back in our work area and meet people and get some conversations going. So that's a very, very big part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to talk a little bit more about screen printing and print in general in a second. Workshops and teaching, I just kind of started getting into this and I'm really, really enjoying it. More on a, not so much on an academic scale, but more in a small community sense. There's a design firm here called Firebelly that has like a summer camp for designers, and they had asked the Post family to come in and kind of talk to their students, and just the same idea as Nico was talking about, of this idea of just sharing everything that you know, and hopefully everyone does the same. And it's very much a big thing in Chicago, I think. Not so much, at least from my experience in New York and California, but this idea of just spilling your brain on people, and then as well as asking people how to accomplish specific things. And I've become very reliant on a lot of people around me in my community of people to help me finish things, and again, I'll get into that in a little bit. Shared house expenses, roommates, very good thing, because lower rent, especially because rent's coming up, getting higher and higher in the city, and the idea of utilities is there's a lot of utilities to pay to run a place. So shared house expenses as well as shared workspaces. You don't need a large studio to yourself at one time. We have our big studio for 7 people, and there's rarely more than 3 people in there at a time, so there's a lot of available space. Also, I organize other shows and alternative art events like that. Doodle party. Me and a couple other friends had a collage party and collaboration party down in Bridgeport a month ago now. People could come in, look at artwork on the walls, and then we had a table with art supplies, and people could just make things and put stuff on the wall themselves. So this idea of interacting with each other and building this network of people, and just keeping communications completely open. So that's it for the slides. I'm just going to go through. These are just slides that are going to run by themselves of examples of my work, and I'm just going to kind of run through a checklist of things I have here. So again, this idea of this gray area. I was brought up learning marketing and how to present a product or a service to a community of people. So that's kind of how I go about doing my artwork as well. It's not how to get your face and your artwork in front of everyone, as many people as possible. It's figuring out your market and figuring out who the people are that you want to see your work and that will enjoy it. So one way I do that is by a lot of research. I find other artists that I enjoy that have similar aesthetics to me, figure out who's covering them, and in turn send basically cold emails. Is that a real term? It's like cold calling, but with emails. So I'll find other people that have the similar aesthetic and where they're getting run on the internet. I do most of my stuff through the internet and shoot an email to someone who writes a blog. It's like, hey, I saw so-and-so on your site. I really like it. I thought you might be interested in what I'm doing. No pressure. Later. And just keeping it really informal and just being like, yeah, I dig what you do. Do you dig what I do? And, getting this communication going. So another thing about it is it's very much a lifestyle. I think a lot of us can agree in here that being an artist isn't a choice. That at least for me, it's not a choice. I have to make things, or I am sad, basically. So it's very much a lifestyle, and being able to, a lot of my time is spent supporting other artists in my network of people. Of, hey, what are you up to? You have you have this, and this going on. All right, I'm going to tell everyone else that my friend Bob has this thing too, if I'm talking about things. So the idea of helping each other too is a very, very big thing. a lot of the income that I make as an artist is directly put back into buying other people's artwork in the community because I really enjoy what they do, and they do the same thing that I'm doing, so I don't really see any other better place for that money to go. Creating a community. One thing, another big thing about the Post family is this, our space was started as strictly a workspace for us to get back to working with our hands, and has turned more into this conversation hub of sorts where we allow anyone to kind of come into our space at any time. It's usually by appointment because we're not there all the time, but we're completely open to people coming in. We really, really love this idea of people can come in and look at artwork and then meet people and have a conversation in our space. I'd almost go as far as persuading people to have meetings at our gallery openings. Come in and specifically meet someone there to talk about X, Y, and Z, sit down in the space in a creative environment, meet other people, throw ideas back and forth, and it's all about really helping each other, not being in this shell and just kind of throwing things out on the internet and seeing what's coming back. So getting things out there. What else do I have here? Cold emailing. Another thing that I found that, which was very interesting to me, is I do a lot of screen printing, and as well as some of the other guys in the Post family. And one thing that I've experienced is that prints and editions of things, and I'm not sure if you guys have had the same experience, but editions and prints tend to sell more frequently than one-off pieces of artwork, even if it's priced at a higher point. And it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if it's that. My assumption is that it's a responsibility to buy artwork, a one-off piece of art. You're basically taking a piece of someone, and you have this responsibility for what is hopefully the rest of your life, and making sure that piece is taken care of. With prints and with editions, you don't have a one-of-a-kind piece. It's you obviously want to take care of it, and you obviously want to show this work for the rest of your life, but it's a little bit easier to come to terms with buying something that there's multiples of. It's less of a responsibility, and it could even be subliminal. But prints and editions of things tend to go a lot farther than one-off pieces of art, from my experience. And a lot of these things that Nico was talking about with the online marketing and spreading your stuff to different avenues, whether it's the e-commerce sites or the artist social networks. One thing that I honestly have a problem with is keeping everything up to date. I had a friend who's here tonight that started a website 2.5 years ago and just figured out he had it. A week ago? And he's been trying to have me help him create this website, and I Googled his name, and I was like, dude, you have a website, but it hasn't been updated since 2007. So the idea of creating these profiles or creating these Twitter accounts and online stuff is you really need to make an effort to keep up to date with them and make sure that you're getting your stuff in front of people on a fairly regular basis. If you're just putting things up in a bum rush of things, and you get a one-hit kind of amount of stuff you're giving out, it won't get you won't be reminding people that you're still doing stuff and you still have things to offer. So and that's one thing that even if I don't with these cold emails idea, if I don't even get a response from them, more than likely I'll email again. And just reintroduce myself and say, I thought you'd be interested in this, and just one no from someone in an email does not mean that you should not contact them again. The fact that they emailed you back is probably enough to know that you should keep in touch with them and make sure that they know what you've been up to and what you're planning on doing. And keep everything up to date.
Your time
That's okay. That's my time. Sweet.
Your time is up. And I think something that underlies all of these people's traits is they actually enjoy sales, and they're good salespeople, and that sales isn't this nasty, smarmy, put your foot in the door. It actually can be kind of fun. And Chad is a perfect illustration of that, because when I first contacted Chad, it was because I was over at Lee and Joel's picking up some frames, and Lee and I were talking about this panel, and she said there's somebody who's done something. His name is Scott Thomas. He's a member of the Post family. So I called the Post family to talk to this Scott guy, and Chad answered the phone, and before I knew it, Chad had talked himself onto this panel.
Yeah, I'm very persuasive.
And so I went over to interview him because I met one-on-one with everybody, and Chad told me something really interesting, and he was working me the whole time too, but in a real like pleasant, subtle way. I was happy to be in his company. You were telling me that at the end of your workday, you spend something like 4 hours on emailing, tracking down people to be on their blogs, and
Yeah, when I had a 9-to-5 job, I was working at a marketing company, and once again, this idea of this is a lifestyle. It was very much I would go and do my thing that will pay the bills, and then it was a constant go home and do what I wanted to do. Basically, was to expand my network and do my artwork for. It was quite literally from 6 until about 2 a.m. for a number of years. And it wasn't that I was working. This is what I wanted to do. This idea, and which I've heard from a great man, Amos Paul Kennedy, who's a letterpress guy, that has some pretty enlightening things to say. He says that somebody asked him if he had made sacrifices before, and he did a discussion here a couple months ago, and he said the only time I was giving sacrifices was while I was at my day job.
So, what questions? We can just start with the questions. So people, yes?
This is directed to Lee Tracy. Where the heck do you find the time to do it all? Do you work till 2 in the morning like Chad does?
No, but the moment I wake up, I do. And right through the day, but it doesn't seem like work. I'm having a blast. And I love to make things. I'm in the studio for a little bit, then I go and tweet, then I go back, then I tweet, I water plants, do the kitty litter, tweet, finish a painting, let the world know. So I do work all the time.
I have a few more questions. You mentioned this fabric printing machine. So it's not, what is that exactly?
It's like an inkjet printer for paper, but it's for fabric, and it's water-based inks. So I run the T-shirts through, and then I have to heat them at 350 degrees. It's really amazing. Now, I got it in 2005. When I called support, they didn't really have the answers. I've taken the machine apart 3 times, and now the technology has reached a platform where they're making these machines, and they know.
What's the brand?
Mine is a T-Jet, but the company doesn't exist anymore. It has internal guts that are Epson.
Okay. Did you have another question?
Yes, I did. The whole patron thing. You just find people that want to give you money for nothing?
See, that's what I asked her. I didn't even know what a patron was. She's like, I have this person that gives me money all the time. So.
I don't think you can find them. They find you. And that's why all my ideas are on my site, and everything I want to do, my dreams. So I put it out there.
Do you have to give them something in return, like a piece of art or something like that?
I have several. They all get art. One I can call if I really need it, and I will say, can you please buy a painting? And they would.
Now, Can patrons be shared? Like a co-op?
But you saw the photograph of the bronze and the glass, and some of that gets very expensive. So I do have someone here in Chicago that every once in a while will contact me to see if I need anything, and the answer is yes.
Sometimes they give freely without expecting anything in return?
They get work.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is an exchange, so I've never gotten a blank check, but I would take one.
Yeah?
Hi. I actually have two sets of questions. One is for, the beginning is for Nico, and then the other is for any of you to answer. So for Nico, my question is, for your online gallery, it's a series of questions. How many artists do you represent? How do you generate sales? And how do you promote the gallery in order to generate sales?
Wow. Well, I think I have about, I have 20, and they're not all up yet. And the second question was, how do I generate sales? I do a lot of blogging. So I really utilize the art and design blogs because they really are geared, like people who are looking to buy things look at these blogs. So I really try to get mentioned on them as much as possible. And I find that I found certain ones like Design Sponge, Poppy Talk, some other random ones that, you know, when they post something, I get sales. So, you know, I really utilize that.
Nico told me something interesting. She said she started this when she was doing her day job, and she expected to have to keep doing her day job for a while, and then very soon she started making enough of a living from the online gallery to quit her day job and have it be her full source of income. And what was your second question?
Well, actually, to follow up on that, how much of a percentage then do you take for the price of the work? Is it like a brick-and-mortar gallery?
It's like a traditional gallery where I do take a commission, and it varies with each artist because I have a really diverse kind of, I have stuff that's like $20 all the way to thousands of dollars. So it really just depends on the individual artist and the type of work that we're selling. But, you know, we have like a contract and it's like legal. It's like a brick and mortar.
Thank you. And then I have a question for all of you, which is that no one has addressed the idea that we have to pay health insurance and as freelance artists, because many of us, I'm sure, are freelance, you have to pay insurance on your own. So how do you all approach that?
I don't have insurance, which I don't recommend, but...
Don't listen to that. What I do is I just find out how much money I need to make to live on, including insurance, and then I go out and I make it.
I have insurance. I love my insurance, actually. I wish it would be cheaper. But the plan that I have, and I didn't know that it existed, is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I have to pay that, I think, 4 times a year. It's manageable. The plan is you go to the emergency room. And we've had to use it, and it's fine. My husband had to use his, too. He cut himself in the shop.
High deductible.
Not too high. You can have 1,000, right up till 5,000 deductible. But I just think that as an independent, you know, paying it ourselves, we feel covered. We've used it, and my husband healed, and he had a surgeon, so we're fine with it. Though we do want a better plan out there for everybody.
I found a good sources to go to ehealth.com, and you can do a comparison of health insurance companies. And I actually had an insurance agent who found me health insurance, and then I went to ehealth.com and I did my own research, and I went back to her and I said, this looks like it's less than what you could give, than what you got me for the same thing. And she looked at it and she said, sure enough, yeah, it is. And so I cut my health insurance premium to like $100, you know, by $100 a month, and so. You know, it's not great. We still need health care reform, but, and
I shell out a lot of money. I pay out of pocket, and I just pay individual insurance. Although I was looking at our handouts here, I think doesn't the
no,
they don't, or was it they used to have a group
Chicago Artist Resource.
They don't have it anymore. Oh, okay. That's what I was going to say. Maybe that might be, but why did they? Oh, I don't know. They just don't have it.
She's not.
Oh.
eHealth sounds like a good intermediate step.
Yeah, eHealth. So, yes?
I have a couple questions. One for Nico. Was it difficult to learn the ins and outs of e-commerce? I've never done it before.
No, I guess I You know, I enjoy it, so I guess I just started visiting other people's sites and reading other people's blogs and kind of seeing how people were commenting and interacting. And then, of course, you can email people directly. I found that people are generally very friendly and willing to talk, or email. It's not. It wasn't hard for me, I guess, because I enjoy doing it, and so I just kind of am on the computer a lot and looking at how things are, I guess, structured or how people relate. So.
And then I have another question for everyone. When it comes to your personal finances of being self-employed, were there any, I don't know, pitfalls that you avoided or mistakes you made that maybe we could learn from of, you know, when it comes maybe to taxes or not?
Oh, yeah, I'll just jump right in because a lot of my book is about that, about how to keep artists from being starving artists. And that is, every artist needs to assess how much realistically they need to live on. I don't think a lot of artists actually know how much it costs to live. And then you need to set financial goals and also don't fritter away money. You have to keep track how much you're spending. I know it's really boring sounding, but man, when you're working on margins of $100 or $200 a month, you can't afford just to like underbid a job a little bit or waste some money on something. So you have to be very tight with your money and watching it. And how about you, Chad?
How'd you do?
Yeah, why don't you ask your question again? How do you...
Oh, how do I do it? I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, how do I do it, Chad?
I don't have health insurance. No, yeah, it's very much about figuring out how much you need to live on. I specifically use I have a credit card that I use specifically for my expenses that I can write off for tax stuff. So if I'm going to the art store, all of the expenses I put out to make art or to do research for art, I put on one card, and then that tracks it for me automatically. That works for me. There may be better ways to do it, but that's worked for me so far. So that's a good way to keep kind of two things separate. I have like a normal checking account and then a credit card that's strictly all business expenses. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned to kind of split things apart.
Well, and then, yeah, and I know the debit cards, a lot of artists do that, but I also use QuickBooks, and I put every single expense on there, and then it generates reports and stuff so I can really track how much I do. And also I keep a spreadsheet of how much money I can anticipate coming in per year. And how do you do it?
I balance my checkbook, for sure, and then write everything as much as I can off.
And you know how much you need to live on?
Yeah, I do, monthly.
How about you, Nico?
I do QuickBooks too.
Talk in the microphone.
Oh, I do QuickBooks too. Yeah, I guess it's kind of the latter. What Chad said is that having like a separate card, like a business expense card, so you can write things off.
Do you have an LLC?
I have an LLC, which I had it for a long time before I had the gallery.
That's called a limited liability corporation.
So I do all my taxes at the end of the year through that. I get like, part of my housing expenses and my utilities and anything that I'm, my internet, packaging materials, some meal expenses, stuff like that.
Okay, any other questions? How about, you've had your hand up for a while, the lady in the black with the blonde hair.
Yes, just a couple of questions. How about pricing? How do you price things? What do you take into consideration? That's one question. And then another question would be, do you ever have licensing opportunities, or is that something you would want to try to cultivate?
I license my work a lot through the art consultants I work with. And for my public art commissions, I take 15% off the top, and I keep it for myself, and all the other expenses come out of that.
Pricing fair. I want to be paid. A painting doesn't go for $20,000. It just doesn't seem right to me. And I'm not sharing the money. So I enter a dialogue. And to be paid $5,000 for a painting that I love and they love, I'm fine.
That a gallery would have priced at 20.
Right, and when I was in the gallery system, my prices were going up, and I couldn't afford them. My friends couldn't afford them. So I had to decide, do I go down that route? Because that is a road. It's not famous artists, but there is sort of a game there that it wasn't happy for me. What I'm doing now is fulfilling, and it's real, and it's not making a living. I'm making a life. I'm living a life.
Lee, you told me you were going to try doing or best offer, like putting a price on your website.
Well,
with the
and
paintings.
I'm funny. I do like to experiment, and I'm not afraid. When I started the T-shirts, there was some moaning and groaning that I had made a mistake, but I didn't, because if it's enjoyable and fun, and also one more line of sustainability for me, then I'm smart. You know.
And Chad mentioned that that the editions and prints seem to go a little more easily, and I'm kind of suspecting that are those usually priced a little less because
there's I can't remember where I heard of this, and to go back to your idea of pricing overall, there's this practice that people have been using where some artists, where they track their time that it takes for them to make a painting or a piece of artwork, which I usually do, and they sell it for an hourly rate, which is kind of interesting. So if someone comes up to you that washes dishes, they ask you how much a painting is. You say, well, how much do you make an hour? I spent 10 hours on this, the 10 hours of your wage. You're going to pay me for my painting, which I think is really interesting. It's kind of a strange thing. I haven't really got into it very, very much, but I thought it was. So if someone, obviously with a bigger, a lawyer comes to you and says, well, how much is your painting? Okay, I spent 10 hours on it. What's your hourly rate for 10 hours? So it's an experiment more than anything, but this idea of tracking your time, and I mean, I have most of my pieces are done very quickly and crudely and take minimal time, so a lot of my stuff is cheaper.
How much? What's your price range for your?
And anything from $10 to $1,000 about. I tend to keep it on the low end. I try to keep it as accessible as possible, and a lot of my stuff that I don't take an extreme amount of time on. I work very rapidly with things. I'll have nights where I'll make three or four pieces in one evening in a couple hours. But this idea of prints as well, creating one piece, and I do a lot of screen printing. Creating one piece and making multiples of it is another way to bring your costs down for your artwork, because you can make that same money multiple times because you have more than one, and it makes it a lot easier for people to purchase your artwork, even if it's something on the lower end. There's more of a possibility that now they own that artwork. If they're looking for artwork again, there's a chance that they're going to come to you and see what you're working on, and hopefully grow that relationship with you of buying artwork.
Well, and through these art consultants I'm cultivating, I've sold hundreds and hundreds of prints of my paintings for hotel rooms. And Nico, how do you decide how to price things?
Well, it's funny because I think I mentioned earlier that the commissions with each artist is different. Because when artists come to me, they say, well, how do you want to price stuff? So first thing I ask, because I really want them to be comfortable with what they need. So I say, well, why don't you tell me what you need to be compensated for? So then they say, okay, so this is the price. No, and whether I feel like it's within a reasonable price range for what it is, and sometimes it's at a lower price range, sometimes it's a higher price range. I usually take less of a commission the higher it gets, because I want the piece to sell. And I understand I can't like double it, like I would maybe something lower or something. And I feel like that's fair. Maybe it's almost similar to what you were saying, that theory about how much you just kind of move it around, and I don't think it's set.
Yeah, it's a question that even people that have been doing it for a long time that I've asked, like, how do you price things? And it's a really, really difficult thing to figure out. You really just have to experiment and see what happens with it. I've never had somebody say, "Oh, this is how I price things." The end. Everyone's always like, "I have no idea if I price something at this price and it's been around for a while, then I bring it back a little bit. If I price something that's very low and it sells immediately, I know the next thing that's similar to that, I should probably price a little bit higher."
And that's so liberating from the gallery system, which is like, oh, you can't go back down, and you can't sell this work less than some gallery is selling it in LA, and it's like, anytime it sits there.
When someone's interested in a painting, I always say, would you like two? And a lot of times the answer is yes, or three. So it works. This year, a lawyer in LA bought five pieces, a work on paper, 3 paintings. So my husband made a crate, and it all went out. One swoop, one check.
I strongly recommend you read this book called Guerrilla Selling. I learned a whole lot from that on how, just if you're a one-person business, how to make a sale. Okay, so the person
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. With the broken something or other in the...
For obvious reasons, I have to start working with installers and fabricators. I do a lot of public artwork, and question would be to you, how did you start hiring and subcontracting fabricators, and what would be your advice how to learn this?
There's a lot to learn about it, know about it, and that's why I wrote the book. So you can read the book, but finding fabricators, geez, I would... A whole other forum, yeah. Sorry, but yes. There isn't a single list to go to. I and some other artists and some other public art agencies are trying to start a list. It's mostly by word of mouth with other artists or going to this place called ThomasNet on the internet. And that's a place, it's not for artists particularly, but it's the leading guide for, like, if you want to find people who make stuff, do fabricating and stuff like that. So thomasnet.com, I think it is. We have 8 more minutes, and are there any other? Okay, there's a question way back in the back there.
Hi, this question's for Lynn. I had a question about, you said you worked with consultants who do corporate art, and I was wondering if you seek them out or if they seek you out, or is it a sort of a two-way street?
I started seeking them out a little bit, but ever since I put my website up, they find me. They're just constantly trolling, and that's why I like working for art consultants, because they're the perfect middleman. They're always looking for clients and always looking for people to buy art, and once you get in with an art consultant, they'll keep coming back to you over and over again. And not that many artists, relatively speaking, relative to how many are out there, make the effort to cultivate these art consultants. So, like the other day, I had one that I wanted to work with just on my list. I hadn't even contacted her yet. She was just an idea in my head that I was going to contact, and she contacted me. She's an art consultant from New York, and she put my work up at 20 North Clark yesterday. So, and I don't cast a wide net, because I found out that my biggest problem now is trying to keep up with the demand for my work, and I don't want to let people down. I don't want to overpromise.
Can I ask you, who keeps track or keeps up with your websites? Do you maintain your websites, or do you pay somebody to do that? And can you talk a little bit about how you designed
other people's
also?
pixels, the end, period, answer to my every artist prayer.
It's a website that you can go and subscribe to, right? And then they give you like a template, and you just kind of fill it in.
It was started by some SAIC students who realized that not all of us can. For years, I was like sending my images to one guy to upload at $15 an hour. It's like now I can just do everything myself. It's just an outstanding other people's pixels. And if you want a website with bells and whistles and like I think they can do streaming video and stuff, but I don't need to. I just need a place to put up my portfolio, you know? And that's strictly what it was designed for.
Flickr's a good place too. It's really
evidently.
simple, and it's become more and more reputable as a place to go to find people's artwork. It's very simple. It works very similar to a lot of web-based things. Like it's basically like writing an email. They ask you for an image, you find it. And then you fill in a form, and then you click a button, and it's up. So that's another easy way. I'm lucky enough to have web developers as friends, and I do most of my own hack web designing skills, which are not good. But that's another thing. Utilize people that you know. If you know somebody who has a lot of trades and stuff like that too. I do a lot of work on. Hey, can you help me with my website for a piece of artwork?
Well, and Leah and Nico's websites are extremely sophisticated and gorgeous. How did yours come about?
My friend did the template, so he designed the whole thing,
And you updated
then
yourself?
he updated it because I've had it since early '90s, and I would wait and do it quarterly. But then, you know, you get a little antsy and you want to get in there, so I got Go Live. I haven't even read the book yet, but the manual. But I'm able to go in and upload my paintings now. And you can copy and paste HTML, and sometimes there is another person I call to clean it up if there's a little glitch or something and I can't find it in the code.
So you had someone else do your own template, and then you learned how to update your own template. And then Nico?
Yeah, I had some website designers. They did the template for both the store, because it's pretty complex to do a store, and they also did my blog at the same time. And then so I do all the back end. Like I upload everything, I take the photographs, I go through WordPress for my blog. So they made a template for WordPress for me. And I do some hack HTMLs too, which I think they're pretty easy. You can kind of Google, like if you want to be like, I need to do a link, you know, in my copy area. You can Google it, like how do I do, you know, make a link, and there's code out there, and you can just start playing around, and that's how I have learned.
Yeah, that's how I do everything too.
And it's
if
fairly
people call
simple.
me to ask me to do things, and I say Google it, and I hang up.
Well, I'm gonna wrap this up now. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
This program is partially supported by a grant from the Illinois Arts Council, a state agency.